The 2020 NFL draft class is 5 years into their careers, and in today's video, we're going to be going back and grading the back half of the first round, which is picks 17 through 32. This draft took place during COVID, and Commissioner Roger Goodell was announcing the selections from his house. There were some incredibly talented players from this class, as you'll see in today's video, and unfortunately some all-time draft busts too. The first half of the 2020 first round was released last week if you're interested, and that will be linked at the end. We will be going in reverse order, so we will be starting with the Chiefs selection of running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire and finishing with the selection of Cowboys receiver CeeDee Lamb. We have 16 picks to grade, so let's dive right in. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the final pick of the first round back in 2020 and was the first running back off the board. He had a productive first year in 2020 as he had 1,100 yards from scrimmage. Unfortunately, his production decreased year over year and he peaked in his rookie season. He also missed some time due to injury during the 2022 season, and ultimately a 7th round pick took his job, named Isaiah Pacheco. CEH had moments throughout his Chiefs tenure, but even when he was relied on, he was never the best player, and the moments he had occurred less and less as time went on. He played 2 games for the Saints in 2024 and averaged just 3.5 yards per carry, and unfortunately it is more than fair to say Clyde's best days are behind him. There's a reason running backs want to get paid when they have the opportunity, and it's because if they miss the opportunity, it's gone. Clyde has less than 2,000 career rushing yards and has just 19 career touchdowns, and this grade is a D. Jeff Gladney was the Minnesota Vikings' second first-round pick of the night after a trade back with the 49ers so they could draft receiver Brandon Aiyuk. Unfortunately, Jeff is no longer with us as he passed away in May of 2022 at the age of 25. From a football standpoint, he was picked on as a rookie back in 2020 quite a bit, which was to be expected for any rookie corner, especially in a year where there were no preseason games, to learn from any sort of game experience. Jeff was released by the Vikings in August of 2021 due to an indictment for domestic violence, but I want this to be clear, he was found not guilty in March of 2022. He was picked up by the Cardinals shortly after before passing away in a car crash in May of 2022. Gladney was 25 years old at the time of his death, and may Jeff Gladney continue to rest in peace. The Dolphins selected Auburn corner Noah Igbinoghene with the 30th pick in the first round as he was their third first-round pick of the night. The other two were Tua, of course, and offensive tackle Austin Jackson. Igbinoghene was a very young first-round pick back in 2020 as he was 20 years old for most of his rookie season and didn't turn 21 until late November. And because of this, I thought a lot of patience was going to be required with the selection, and that he would have not just one, but several welcome to the NFL moments early in his career. And he did, but he never panned out for the Dolphins the way they hoped. He was traded prior to the 2023 season to the Cowboys in a rare player-for-player exchange as he was traded for Cowboys corner Kelvin Joseph. He played 1 season for Dallas before becoming a free agent prior to the 2024 season and ultimately signed with Washington, which is where he is today. He didn't play bad for the Commanders in 2024 relative to what was expected, but this is grading how he played in Miami, and he played in 32 of 50 possible games for Miami during his 3 years there and was not good when he played. 5 years later, this is an F. Offensive tackle Isaiah Wilson was a pick Titans fans would like to forget, and there is almost zero footage of me to show from Wilson's career as he played 4 snaps for his entire career. 4. They were all against the Colts in Week 12 of 2020, and Wilson was traded less than a year later to the Dolphins for a 7th round pick. He was waived by the Dolphins 3 days later for missing a physical and missing 2 workouts. The Giants signed him to their practice squad in September, and he was released a few months later. Some NFL stories are long and some are short, and he played 4 snaps for the team that drafted him in the first round, and I honestly don't think it's unfair to say this is the biggest draft bust in NFL history. At least Ryan Leaf and Jamarcus Russell started and won NFL games for their teams. Isaiah Wilson played 4 career snaps, an F grade. Patrick Queen was the Ravens' first-round pick, and I really liked this selection at the time because I thought for sure the Seahawks were going to take Queen at pick 27, but they ended up taking Jordyn Brooks instead. And because of that, I absolutely loved the selection when it was made, and it reminded me of the Ravens drafting Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum a couple of years later, just good players falling into their laps. Queen had 3 100 total tackle seasons during his time in Baltimore, and the only season he didn't have 100 tackles was back in 2021 when he had, you guessed it, 98 total tackles. Now, tackles aren't everything, and we've discussed that before on the channel, but I think personally that I've underappreciated what Patrick Queen has accomplished through the years. During his final year in Baltimore, he was a Pro Bowler as well as a second-team All-Pro, and he was also a Pro Bowler in 2024 with the Steelers too. Now, what he does in Pittsburgh does not factor into this grade, and that applies to every draft pick, but Patrick Queen has never missed a game in his career, and he plays at a pretty high level. He misses a tackle or two more than you'd like, but he's a really solid player, and the Ravens got a lot of production out of a player drafted late in the first round. 5 years later, this is a B+. Jordyn Brooks was the Seahawks' first-round pick in 2020, and while I was surprised when this pick was made, he played a lot better than I initially thought he would. He started 55 games for the Seahawks in his 4 years with the team and had near-perfect attendance as he played in 63 of 67 possible games for Seattle and only missed 2 total games in his final 3 seasons with the team. And due to how violent the sport is, that's a bigger battle than you may initially think, is staying healthy. Brooks is now a Dolphin as he signed a 3-year deal with Miami last offseason, and he had a really good year for Miami in 2024 as he had over 140 tackles, had 11 tackles for a loss, and even had 3 sacks as an off-ball linebacker. The one big knock with Jordyn is he gets picked on in coverage quite a bit, and that happened during his time in Seattle, and even happened during his time in Miami in 2024 too. Overall, his time in Seattle was okay for a first-round pick. You can certainly say that Seattle could have hoped for a little more from a first-round pick, but like we've seen throughout the draft grade videos, they could have done a lot worse. A B- grade. Jordan Love was the 4th quarterback taken in the first round of the 2020 draft, and this is a complicated pick to grade. On one hand, there's a lot of teams that would love to have Jordan Love be their franchise quarterback, and I get it, but on the other hand, he didn't play for 3 years and had just 3 touchdowns to 3 interceptions during the first 3 years of his career, and during his rookie season, Green Bay lost in the NFC Championship game and the divisional round of the playoffs the following season. Do things change if they draft T. Higgins instead? I don't know, but why this pick is also complicated is Jordan Love played really well during the 2023 season, but I don't think he played at the same level in 2024, and I also don't think he was fully healthy throughout the year, despite playing in 15 of 17 games after a pretty nasty injury in Week 1 against the Eagles. He has back-to-back 25-plus passing touchdown seasons, and honestly, I do think he is a tad underrated at the moment due to how he played in 2024. That, again, wasn't his best year for several reasons. I think there are several grades you can go with here that can justify the Jordan Love pick, but ultimately 5 years later, we gave this an A-. Brandon Aiyuk was the 6th receiver taken in the first round of the 2020 draft, and Aiyuk has been a solid player for the 49ers since being drafted. He had a near 750-yard rookie season back in 2020 before having 800 yards in 2021, then clearing the 1,000-yard mark for the first time in 2022, then exploded onto the scene with a 1,300-yard year in 2023, in which he was named a second-team All-Pro. There was a lot of drama around Aiyuk during the 2024 summer, and I think this soured some people on Brandon Aiyuk relative to the player he is when healthy, causing them to diminish what he has accomplished in the league. I am a firm believer that he was not 100% in 2024 before he unfortunately tore his ACL and MCL, and that he was slowly working his way back to being the player he was in 2023. He is a really good player when healthy, but is also overshadowed by 2 guys in this class in CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson, which is unfortunate for Aiyuk. I also think there are a lot of teams that would love to have Brandon Aiyuk on their roster, most notably a team like the Patriots, but he is kind of difficult to grade. He has just shy of 300 career receptions and has 25 career receiving touchdowns, and 5 years later, we gave this an A-. Cesar Ruiz was the Saints' first-round pick in 2020, and he has mostly played right guard for them through the first 5 years. Ruiz has his ups and downs as a player, and I know he's not a household name by any means, but this is also a trickier pick to grade than you may think. On one hand, he's not a great player, and he's not a guy that will make 4 or 5 Pro Bowls by the end of his career, and a player that will be inducted into the Saints' Ring of Honor. But on the other hand, he's probably going to start 85 or 90 or even 100 games for the Saints over the course of his career, if not more. He was a 21-year-old rookie, so he is just 26 years old, and he could realistically play for another 5 or 6 years and nobody would bat an eye. But he's also not great, and I think he is, in the grand scheme of things, an average player. I don't think there's any particular phase in his game where he's elite, nor do I think there's any area in his game where he's weak either. He's just a guy along the offensive line, and the Saints could have made a much worse selection than Cesar Ruiz, and 5 years later I do give a slight bonus for playing 13 games or more in every season of his career. Ultimately, we gave this a C+. Kenneth Murray for the Chargers is up, and it was a long 4 years in LA for Murray. He racked up a lot of tackles during his time in LA, but that's not everything, and it especially showed on tape that unfortunately carried over to his tenure in Tennessee, and based on the first 5 years of his career, will probably carry over to Dallas too. He reminds me a lot of Jamin Davis, a 2021 first-round pick, who, like Murray, does not have the instincts a good linebacker in the NFL needs to have, and there was a reason that despite playing in 59 of 67 possible games for the Chargers over the first few years of his career, that they were more than willing to let him go in free agency after the 23 season. Unfortunately, he missed more tackles than you would have liked as an inside linebacker, as his career missed tackle percentage is over 10%, and it peaked in 2021 at over 19%. He is only 26, and I wish him the best in Dallas and wherever else he may go throughout the rest of his NFL career, but even if he completely turns it around, this is based on his time in Los Angeles, and 5 years later, this gets a C-. Justin Jefferson was the 5th receiver taken in the 2020 draft, and in 5 years, Jefferson hasn't been just a good first-round pick for Minnesota, he's been an all-time draft pick for Minnesota. Jefferson has the most career receiving yards of any player through their first 5 seasons, as he has over 7,400 yards in 77 career games. He is a 4-time All-Pro and a 2-time First-Team All-Pro, and has 3 seasons with 1,500 or more yards. He has 5 1,000-yard seasons in 5 years, and he actually had more yards per game in 2023 than he did in 2022, which was the year he won the Offensive Player of the Year. Unfortunately, Jefferson got hurt and missed some time, but he still had a 1,000-yard year in 2023. I don't think Jefferson received as much media attention in 2024 as he has in other years, whether it was due to Jamar Chase having a great year, or Saquon, or whoever, but he still had 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns, and finished top 10 in Offensive Player of the Year voting. He isn't a player you factor into the game plan. He is the game plan for opposing defenses, and they still can't stop Jefferson. He has the most receiving yards per game in NFL history, and this is an easy A+. The Eagles stunned everyone when they selected TCU receiver Jalen Reagor with the 21st pick. It was a consensus to pretty much everyone that Justin Jefferson was a better prospect than Jalen Reagor, but they still made the pick. Now, one thing that gets misconstrued over time is that Justin Jefferson was not a can't-miss prospect, and Jalen Reagor was not a horrible prospect either. Reagor was an early to mid-second round prospect, while Jefferson was a mid to late first round prospect himself. It was a gamble that unfortunately didn't pay off. In his first year with the Birds, Reagor had 31 receptions for 396 yards and a touchdown, and in his second season he had 33 receptions for 299 yards and 2 touchdowns. Everyone drafts busts at some point, but it's unfortunate the Eagles drafted a bust directly in front of a player who is on pace to be an all-time great. If there is any consolation within this, it's that the Eagles drafted a future Super Bowl MVP with their second-round pick in Jalen Hurts, and the Eagles are an extremely successful franchise year in and year out that made a significant draft blunder, but have done a lot of great things since. Unfortunately, the Reagor pick receives an F grade. K'Lavon Chaisson was a really good pass-rushing prospect from LSU, but unfortunately he didn't work out with the Jags. Chaisson played 57 games in 4 years with Jacksonville and played 15 or more games in 3 of his 4 seasons with the team, so he was a pretty durable player, but he wasn't effective when on the field. He had a then career-high 2 sacks with the Jags in 2023, and unfortunately he only started 11 games with the Jags over 4 years. He signed with the Panthers in the 2023 offseason, but they released him prior to the season starting. A week later, he was signed by the Raiders, where he would go on to play 15 games for them in 2024, in which he had 5 sacks and looked like a better player. Chaisson will be just 26 years old at the start of the 25 season, and there is a chance he can build off of what he did in 2024, which was being a serviceable player and more or less a pass rush specialist. Players like that have a role in the league, and I think there is a chance Chaisson sticks around longer than people may think due to this, as he is now a member of the Patriots. But ultimately, this grade is based on what he did during his time in Jacksonville. And Jacksonville had 2 first-round picks back in 2020, as they were K'Lavon Chaisson and corner CJ Henderson, and both were big whiffs. Ultimately, this grade is an F. The Raiders stunned everyone when they took Ohio State corner Damon Arnette with the 19th pick in the first round back in 2020, and I know the Raiders received a lot of criticism during this time period for first-round picks, rightfully so, but I truly think this was the worst of them all. Clelin Ferrell was a player who had a high floor and was projected in the low to mid-20s of the 2019 draft that was selected at number 4 overall. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but he was supposed to be a high floor, lower ceiling guy. Henry Ruggs was, to me, a talented player on his way to becoming a really good receiver that made a horrible life decision. But Damon Arnette was clearly a day 2, borderline day 3 guy, and he played like it. He only played in 13 career NFL games, and in 13 games he was targeted 40 times and allowed 31 receptions for 499 yards while allowing a single touchdown to no interceptions. There were so many better players on the board, and to make matters worse, he was released in 2021 after a video of him was released that was not a good look, which is a tremendous understatement, and I'll leave it at that. 5 years later, this is an F. Austin Jackson of the Dolphins is up, and he was their second of 3 first-round picks on the night. Jackson has been an okay or average player for Miami, really at best, and I think that's a good word to describe him. There's games where he plays really well, where he'll pitch a shutout as a pass protector, or maybe allow a single pressure on 35 or 40 pass rushing snaps, which is incredible. Then the following week will allow 5 pressures or 6 pressures on 30 pass blocking snaps and give up a sack as well. There's an old saying that a third of first-round picks are stars, a third are average, and a third are busts, and I think Jackson is pretty close to the epitome of average. He's played in 56 of 84 possible games, which I do think is a hair disappointing because he's not great when he plays, and then you throw in the fact that he's missed a third of his career games, and that's not a great first-round pick by any stretch of the imagination. Having a player who is a gamble as to whether or not he'll play well on any given Sunday is not ideal for the franchise that selected them, but he's also played north of 50 games, which is a lot more than other players can say. He's not a bust, but he's not a hit either, and throw in the fact he's missed a third of his career games, and this is a C-. CeeDee Lamb was the third receiver taken in the 2020 draft, and through 5 years has 4 1,000-yard seasons and technically 4 1,100-yard seasons, and has been a terrific player for the Cowboys. Unfortunately, Dak Prescott was injured in October of CeeDee's rookie year, and we bring this up because I think it's fair to say that CeeDee would have rather easily been a 1,000-yard receiver if that injury never happened. He is quietly working on 3 straight 100-reception, 1,100-yard seasons, and is already a 4-time Pro Bowler at 26 years old. His best year by far was in 2023 when he had an outstanding 135 receptions for 1,749 yards and 12 touchdowns and was named a first-team All-Pro. Naturally, there's a lot of pressure playing for the Cowboys because of how much media attention they get and how often they play on primetime, but there's a lot more pressure when you are a receiver wearing the number 88 because you have the legacy to continue. It started back with Drew Pearson, then continued with Michael Irvin, and eventually continued with Dez Bryant too. And in 5 years, CeeDee has over 6,300 receiving yards and is just 4 receptions shy of 500 career catches. I know Justin Jefferson is in the same class as him and has over 1,000 career more receiving yards, but the grade for Lamb is pretty simple. It's an A+. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 46% of people watching are subscribed, and the support is very much appreciated. The first half of the first round video is linked above, and until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.